She gave a cold, shivering boy soup and shelter. Then a wealthy white woman called the police and accused her of kidnapping. Why? Because Evelyn Moore was black and kind. But that false accusation set off a chain reaction that would shatter one man's empire, expose a corporate lie, and ignite a wave of justice no one saw coming. Don't blink, because this quiet hero just might change how you see the world. On a cold, rain-soaked evening, Evelyn Moore, a 67-year-old cleaning lady, was quietly finishing her late shift at a small diner. The neon lights flickered above her as she wiped down the last few tables, her thin hands moving with steady purpose. Life had never been kind to Evelyn, widowed young, living alone in a modest apartment and working long hours just to survive. But despite the hardships etched into every line of her weathered face, her heart had remained tender. As she looked out through the window, she noticed a boy in a wheelchair sitting alone outside, shivering under the relentless rain. His frail body was wrapped in a damp, tattered blanket, and his wide eyes reflected fear and loneliness. Without hesitation, Evelyn dropped a rag and rushed into the storm. She gently approached the boy, her voice soft with concern. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" she asked. The boy, Liam Bennett, looked up at her with weary blue eyes and whispered, "My dad told me to wait here. He said he'd be back." Evelyn's heart broke. No child should be abandoned in the cold, especially one so vulnerable. She guided Liam into the diner, wrapped a towel around his shoulders, and served him hot soup and toast. Simple comforts that meant everything in that moment. What Evelyn didn't know was that across the street, a man watched from the shadows of a luxury car. That man was Charles Bennett, Liam's biological father, and a powerful corporate figure. He had left his son alone, believing hardship would toughen him. But as he watched Evelyn's selfless act of compassion, something shifted within him. That single moment, one woman's choice to show kindness when no one else would ignite a chain of events that would alter not just her life, but the lives of everyone involved. As Evelyn Moore tended to young Liam Bennett inside the warm diner, gently wiping raindrops from his face and encouraging him to eat, a storm far colder than the one outside began to stir. The quiet act of kindness she had extended to a shivering child was about to be twisted into something ugly. Victoria Langston, a well-dressed, sharp-tongued diner regular, and a woman of status and entitlement, entered the scene. With a look of disdain, she locked eyes on Evelyn and the boy, and immediately assumed the worst. "What do you think you're doing with that child?" she snapped, her voice slicing through the calm like a blade. Evelyn, startled but composed, replied, "He was outside in the rain. Alone. I'm just helping." But Victoria's smirk deepened. "Helping? Or kidnapping?" she sneered before pulling out her phone and calling the police. "Yes, I'd like to report a child abduction. The suspect is an elderly black woman," she said coldly, making sure everyone in the diner heard. In an instant, suspicion flooded the room. A few customers stopped sipping their coffee and began whispering. The warmth that Evelyn had created for Liam was swallowed by icy judgment. She stood frozen, the weight of the moment heavy on her thin shoulders. Her heart pounded, not out of guilt, but from the sting of being so quickly and cruelly misjudged. This wasn't just about Liam anymore. It was about who she was, what she looked like, and how society chose to see her. Liam, sensing the fear and confusion, gripped Evelyn's hand tightly. "Don't let them take me," he whispered, his small voice breaking through the hostility. But Evelyn stood her ground, her voice calm yet firm. I've done nothing wrong. Compassion isn't a crime. Across the street, Charles Bennett continued to observe from his car. He watched as the woman who had shown his son more warmth than he ever had became the target of false accusations, based not on her actions, but on her appearance and status. It was a moment that revealed more than just prejudice. It exposed the deep cracks in a society quick to fear what it refuses to understand. For Evelyn, the night became more than a quiet act of humanity. It became a silent battle against the injustice that had followed her all her life. From the sleek black car parked discreetly across the street, Charles Bennett sat watching the diner in silence, his sharp eyes never leaving the image of Evelyn Moore comforting his son. As the CEO of Bennett Industries, a powerful, high-stakes conglomerate, Charles was a man who believed in control, strategy, and calculated moves. Kindness, to him, was either weakness or currency. Watching Evelyn wrap a towel around Liam and offer him food not only surprised him, it intrigued him. In his world, people didn't do anything without expecting something in return. What did this woman want? Why would someone with nothing risk herself to care for a boy who wasn't her responsibility? His mind quickly turned to optics, PR damage, and opportunity. He didn't yet see Evelyn as a person, only a potential pawn. Later that evening, after finding out her name and address through his assistant Isabel Cruz, Charles arrived unannounced at Evelyn's modest apartment. Dressed in a long, dark coat, he exuded quiet authority as he stood at her doorstep. Evelyn, surprised and wary, let him in. She recognized him instantly, Liam's father. "Good evening, Mrs. Moore. We need to talk," he said coolly. As they sat across from each other, the warmth of her humble home contrasted sharply with his cold, clinical demeanor. Charles got straight to the point. Bennett Industries is facing backlash due to recent scandals. Your actions at the diner have caught the public's attention. People are calling you a hero. I'd like to offer you a position at my company, a simple job, good pay. All you need to do is be seen, be the face of our social responsibility campaign. Evelyn stared at him, her heart sinking. It wasn't a thank you. It wasn't even respect. It was manipulation. "I helped your son because it was the right thing to do," she said softly. "Not for show, not for money." But Charles had already decided. In his eyes, her poverty meant she had no choice. "You have nothing to lose, Mrs. Moore," he said, glancing around at her modest belongings. "This is an opportunity people like you don't get often." Though her instincts screamed caution, Evelyn thought of Liam, of the boy left alone in the rain, of his fragile smile when he found warmth. She agreed, but not for Charles, not for his company. She did it for the child who still needed protection from a world that had already failed him too many times. As Charles left her apartment, a faint smirk formed on his lips. He believed he had gained control of another piece on his corporate chessboard. But what he failed to see was that Evelyn Moore wasn't just another pawn. She was about to become the one force he couldn't predict, manipulate, or defeat. The game had begun, and this time, compassion was about to rewrite the rules. Evelyn Moore walked through the polished marble halls of Bennett Industries with quiet dignity, mop in hand, her presence as out of place in the glass-walled skyscraper as a wildflower in a concrete lot. It was her first week in the company, and the icy stares and whispered gossip that trailed behind her made it clear she wasn't welcome. Senior staff in sharp suits passed her without acknowledgement, some with narrowed eyes, others with veiled contempt. To them, she was a token, a PR stunt dressed in overalls, not someone worthy of their respect. Yet Evelyn moved with a calm strength, her posture unbending, her eyes focused. She hadn't come here for their approval. She was here for Liam, the boy she had once pulled from the cold, whose silent pain she could never forget. The most venomous hostility came from Victoria Langston, the same woman who had once accused Evelyn of kidnapping. Now elevated as a high-ranking executive within the company, Victoria made it her mission to remind Evelyn of her place. How touching, she sneered one morning as Evelyn quietly cleaned the executive hallway. The diner janitor is now scrubbing our floors. I suppose they call this community outreach. Laughter rippled among the watching employees, the air thick with humiliation. Evelyn looked up, meeting Victoria's eyes, not with bitterness, but with unwavering calm. I'm here to do my job, Mrs. Langston. You can mock me if you wish, but I'm not ashamed of honest work. Her words silenced the hallway, if only for a moment. But the cruelty didn't stop. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Accusations of being a corporate spy, a charity case, an emotional liability. Even her sincerity was twisted into suspicion. Yet Evelyn endured. She never let the shame they tried to place on her take root. Every day she reminded herself, this wasn't about proving herself to them. It was about staying true to who she was. She cleaned each floor with the same care she had shown Liam, because she believed in the quiet power of integrity. Even in a world ruled by power and profit, she carried herself with the grace of someone who knew her worth, someone who had nothing to hide and everything to protect. But deep down, Evelyn also knew this wasn't just a battle for her dignity. It was a battle for Liam's future. If she gave up, the world around him would remain heartless and cruel. So she stayed. She endured. Because she believed that sometimes the smallest acts of resilience in the face of cruelty are what plant the seeds for real, lasting change. And though they saw her as a weak old woman with no voice, they had no idea that Evelyn Moore was about to become the conscience their corporation never saw coming. One quiet weekend afternoon, when the executive floor of Bennett Industries stood empty and silent, Evelyn Moore was assigned to clean the CEO's office. As she moved through the spacious room, carefully tending to the spotless surfaces, her eyes unintentionally caught a black folder left slightly open on Charles Bennett's desk. It was filled with financial reports and charts, nothing she fully understood. But one detail stood out: a downsizing plan affecting over 3,000 employees. Her heart sank. These weren't just numbers. They were families, lives, and futures. Evelyn knew what it meant to live paycheck to paycheck. She had seen firsthand how losing a job could destroy someone's stability. The idea that thousands of people would be discarded like broken tools in the name of efficiency filled her with a deep and burning unease. Later that evening, she overheard a conversation between Charles and his assistant, Isabel Cruz. "We'll begin the layoffs next Monday," Isabel stated coolly. "Mostly from production and support staff. It'll boost investor confidence and push the stock value up." Charles's voice followed, calm and detached. "Good. They've served their purpose." Evelyn couldn't bear the coldness. These were people, not chess pieces. She stepped into Charles's office and for the first time challenged him directly. "Mr. Bennett, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Do you really believe cutting thousands of jobs for stock gains is the right thing to do? Charles turned, surprised by her presence, but still composed. Mrs. Moore, this is a business decision. It's not personal. But Evelyn refused to accept that. It's personal to every single person you're about to put out on the street. You may not know their names, but they will remember yours. You talk about strategy, but where's your humanity? Her words hung heavy in the air, defying the cold steel of corporate indifference. For a moment, even Charles Bennett, the man who thought kindness was weakness, stood without reply. In that silence, Evelyn's voice carried a truth that no profit margin could bury. She wasn't just cleaning floors anymore. She was cleaning the dust off a conscience long left untouched. The boardroom of Bennett Industries had never felt heavier. Lined with sleek glass walls and filled with powerful executives, it was a place where decisions were made behind closed doors, often without a second thought for the lives affected beyond them. But today, something unusual broke the pattern. Evelyn Moore, a former cleaning lady with no title, no wealth, and no power, stepped into the room at Charles Bennett's invitation. The very people who had once looked through her now stared at her with thinly veiled confusion and contempt. What was she doing here? I invited her, Charles said coolly, silencing the whispers. Let's hear her out. Evelyn stood at the head of the table, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes clear with purpose. I'm not here as an executive, she began. I'm here on behalf of the thousands of workers who've been forgotten. People who've given their strength and loyalty to this company and now fear they're nothing more than a line in your expense reports. Her voice, though soft, carried a weight that demanded attention. You speak of profits and market shares, but when did we start measuring value by how replaceable a person is? Victoria Langston, arms crossed and lips curled, interrupted with a smirk. With all due respect, Ms. Moore, what do you know about corporate survival? Evelyn turned to her, unfazed. I know what it's like to survive, to choose between food and rent, to be unseen. And I know that a company without compassion is just a machine that devours its own people. The room grew silent. One by one, the board members lowered their eyes, confronted by a truth they had long ignored. Charles, too, sat quietly, his mind spinning with the realization that this woman, once dismissed as insignificant, had voiced what no one else dared to say. Evelyn's words didn't come with spreadsheets or strategy memos, but they stirred something deeper. For the first time in that cold, powerful room, the workers had a voice, and it belonged to Evelyn Moore. The decision weighed on Evelyn Moore like a stone in her chest, but her mind was clear. The morning after her impassioned speech to the board of Bennett Industries, she quietly walked into Charles Bennett's office, her resignation letter held firmly in her calloused hand. The same hand that had once mopped floors now trembled, not from fear, but from the gravity of what she was about to leave behind. Charles looked up, a flicker of surprise breaking through his usually composed expression. Mrs. Moore, he said, his voice softer than usual. You don't have to do this. Your voice matters here. Evelyn placed the envelope on his desk with a gentle, decisive motion. Mr. Bennett, I didn't come here to matter. I came here to help, and I've done what I can. But I can't keep working for a company where profit is more sacred than people. Charles sat in silence as her words sank in. He had built an empire on control, precision, and image. But Evelyn, this woman he once believed he could use as a symbol, had instead become a force that challenged everything he stood for. "You'll be taken care of," he offered quietly. "Severance, benefits, whatever you need." Evelyn shook her head. "I don't need anything from this place but peace and a clean conscience." Within hours, word of Evelyn Moore's resignation began to spread. At first, just whispers among employees who had come to respect her strength. But then the media picked it up. Headlines blared. Former janitor resigns from Bennett Industries after speaking out against layoffs. Her story hit a nerve across the city. Evelyn became more than a woman who stood up to injustice. She became a symbol of what compassion looked like in a world gone cold. People who had never met her felt seen in her voice. Workers across industries began sharing their own stories of being discarded, overlooked, and undervalued. Bennett Industries, once the image of untouchable power, now found itself in the middle of a PR storm. News outlets questioned the integrity of the company. Comment sections overflowed with praise for Evelyn, calling her the conscience of the working class, a modern-day heroine, and the woman who reminded us all what matters. Former employees, laid-off staff, and struggling families shared how Evelyn's actions gave them the courage to speak up. Meanwhile, Evelyn returned to her quiet apartment. No spotlight, no press release, just peace. She had no idea what would come next, but for the first time in years, she felt free, not just from a job, but from the silence that so often traps people like her. She had stood up. She had been heard. And now, a city was listening. Evelyn Moore, once overlooked and underestimated, had become a name spoken with reverence and hope, not because she chased power, but because she walked away from it with dignity, leaving behind a spark that would ignite something far greater. Just days after her quiet resignation from Bennett Industries, Evelyn Moore received an unexpected phone call that would change the course of her life once again. The voice on the other end was calm, respectful, and deliberate. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Moore. This is Samuel Ellis, CEO of Orion Group. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Evelyn was taken aback. She had heard of Ellis, a forward-thinking leader known for his commitment to ethical business and community investment. "I've been following your story," he continued, "and I believe the courage you've shown is exactly what our city and our company needs right now." Samuel offered Evelyn a role she never imagined she'd be considered for: to lead a new social impact program aimed at protecting low-income workers, advocating for fair treatment, and rebuilding lives that corporations like Bennett Industries had shattered. More than that, he wanted the initiative to bear her name. "We're calling it the Carter Community Foundation," he said, honoring her late husband's name and her lifelong legacy of quiet service. Though overwhelmed, Evelyn accepted, not out of ambition, but out of purpose. Within weeks, the foundation launched in a repurposed factory building in the heart of the city. What had once symbolized industrial decline was now alive with hope. The Carter Community Foundation quickly became a hub for change, offering vocational training, educational support, mental health counseling, and emergency assistance to struggling families. People flocked to it not just for services, but for what it represented: a place where dignity was restored, where compassion wasn't a slogan, but a daily practice. Evelyn, though humbled by the spotlight, led with grace. She remained the first to arrive and the last to leave, often sitting with visitors one-on-one, listening to their stories with the same warmth she had once shown Liam in the diner. This wasn't just a program, it was a movement, and Evelyn Moore had become its heart, a living reminder that real change doesn't begin in boardrooms, but in moments of courage, kindness, and the willingness to stand up for those without a voice. The impact of Evelyn Moore's actions rippled far beyond the walls of the Carter Community Foundation. What began as a single act of kindness in a rain-soaked diner had transformed into a movement that swept through the city with powerful momentum. Her unwavering stance against greed, her public resignation from Bennett Industries, and her partnership with Orion Group quickly made headlines, not just as a human interest story, but as a symbol of a deeper shift. For the first time in years, public discourse began to center not on profit margins, but on people. Articles poured in, praising Evelyn as the moral compass the corporate world desperately needed. Social media exploded with support, with hashtags like Be Like Evelyn and Compassion First trending across platforms. Workers and other companies began to speak out against unfair practices, drawing strength from her courage. Families who had once been silent victims of layoffs, mistreatment, and systemic neglect now felt seen, heard, and empowered. The Carter Community Foundation became more than a charity. It became a haven, a place where struggling individuals found opportunity, children found hope, and workers found their voice. As businesses across the city watched Orion Group thrive while championing ethics and humanity, the pressure mounted on corporations like Bennett Industries to rethink their values. Even those who once dismissed Evelyn began to reflect. Her story reminded them that one person, armed with nothing but compassion and conviction, could ignite real and lasting change. Evelyn hadn't set out to start a revolution, but her kindness had become contagious, inspiring a city to rediscover the simple truth that people matter more than profit. And from every corner of the community, voices rose not in protest, but in solidarity, with the woman who taught them that courage, dignity, and love still had a place in the modern world. One quiet afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through the windows of the Carter Community Foundation, Evelyn Moore looked up from a stack of applications to find a familiar face standing in the doorway. It was Liam Bennett, taller now, older, with a quiet strength in his eyes that hadn't been there the night they met. "Mrs. Moore," he said softly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "It's me." Evelyn's heart swelled with emotion. She stood and embraced him gently, as if welcoming home a part of her past. They sat together, and Liam began to speak, not just about his life, but about the emptiness that still lingered between him and his father, Charles. "He's trying," Liam admitted, "but he's still so distant. I don't think he knows how to feel, or even how to face what he's done." Then he looked directly at Evelyn, hope flickering in his voice. "But he listens to you. You changed him once. Maybe you could help him see what he's still missing." Evelyn knew the pain of a child craving connection and the damage a closed heart could do. That night, she made the call. Charles agreed to meet her, this time not in a boardroom, but in a quiet corner cafe. Their conversation was raw and honest. For the first time, Charles admitted the truth, how he had used control to shield himself from vulnerability. how he had failed his son. Evelyn didn't scold. She listened, then offered something far more powerful than advice: forgiveness. "It's never too late to be the father he needs," she said. And in that moment, something shifted. The man, once driven by power, now sat humbled, ready to begin the long road toward healing, with Evelyn's words as his guide and his son's love as the reason. The spring sun poured over the university campus on the day of Liam Bennett's graduation, casting everything in a golden glow. Students in navy blue gowns lined up with wide smiles and proud hearts. But amid the cheers and camera flashes, all eyes turned when Charles Bennett, one of the city's most powerful and formerly feared business leaders, stood from his seat and quietly walked toward the stage. His polished shoes echoed across the floor as he approached his son, who had just been called to receive his diploma. Placing a steady hand on Liam's shoulder, Charles took a deep breath and turned to the microphone. The auditorium fell silent. "I am Charles Bennett," he began, his voice steady yet laced with humility. "And today, I stand before you not as a CEO, but as a father who has made many mistakes." The audience held its breath. This was no ordinary speech. "For years, I believed power meant coldness. I taught my son to be strong by showing him nothing but distance. I thought love was a weakness, but I was wrong." He paused, glancing out into the crowd until his eyes found Evelyn Moore, seated quietly in the back row. "The woman who truly saved my son, and, in many ways, saved me, is sitting right there." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Evelyn Moore," he continued, his voice cracking slightly, "showed my son the compassion I never could. She reminded me that success means nothing if you lose your soul on the way there. Her kindness changed our lives." Applause thundered through the hall, some standing, others wiping tears from their eyes. Liam turned to his father, pride and emotion written across his face, and for the first time, they embraced, not as strangers caught between silence and expectations, but as a father and son beginning again. Evelyn sat still, heart full, her eyes shining. She hadn't done it for applause. She'd done it for Liam. And yet, in that moment, she realized that her quiet strength had sparked something much greater: a reconciliation born not from power, but from love, humility, and the courage to change. In the years that followed, the Carter Community Foundation blossomed into something far greater than Evelyn Moore had ever imagined. What started as a modest program to support struggling workers and families became a vibrant beacon of hope across the city. Children, once denied access to education, now studied under its roof. Parents found new careers through free vocational training. Those who had felt invisible in society found purpose, support, and dignity within the walls Evelyn had helped build. And though she never sought recognition, Evelyn became a symbol, a living reminder that one person's courage and compassion could move mountains. As her hair turned fully silver and her steps slowed, Evelyn gradually stepped back from daily operations, passing the torch to Liam Bennett. The boy she had once rescued from the cold rain had grown into a compassionate leader, committed to protecting her values and pushing her vision further. He often called her Grandma Ruth in public, a name that stuck, loved by the community as much as by him. Evelyn spent her final days in a small room overlooking the community garden that now thrived with flowers, vegetables, and laughter. From her window, she could see children learning, neighbors gathering, and families healing, living proof that her quiet battles had not been in vain. Liam visited often, sitting beside her and promising, with tears in his eyes, that her legacy would never fade. When Evelyn passed, the city mourned not with sorrow, but with deep reverence. Thousands came to pay their respects, not because she was famous, but because she had given them hope. Murals were painted, scholarships named in her honor, and the foundation continued to grow, rooted in the values she had lived by every day: compassion, courage, and justice. In the end, Evelyn Moore's legacy was not carved in stone, but in the hearts she touched. And in those hearts, she would live forever, proof that love, no matter how quiet, can change the world. Evelyn Moore's journey reminds us that true power doesn't lie in wealth, status, or influence. It lies in the courage to act with compassion, even when no one is watching. From a single moment of kindness outside a small diner, Evelyn sparked a movement that transformed lives, healed broken families, and challenged a city to rethink what truly matters. She didn't set out to be a hero. She didn't have a grand plan. All she had was a heart willing to help, a voice willing to speak, and a spirit that refused to stay silent in the face of injustice. Her story is proof that even the smallest actions, sharing warmth on a cold night, standing up when others stay quiet, offering dignity to the overlooked, can ripple outward in powerful, lasting ways. In a world often driven by profit, noise, and speed, Evelyn chose empathy. And because she did, thousands found hope where there was once only despair. Now, it's our turn. Ask yourself, what small act of kindness can I offer today? Who around me might need a voice, a hand, or simply someone to believe in them? You don't need power to make a difference. You just need heart. If Evelyn Moore's story has moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Live it. Be the spark in someone else's storm. Because when we lead with love, when we act with courage, even the quietest among us can change the world. Life, as we come to understand in our middle years, is not merely a journey of milestones or achievements. It's a quiet accumulation of choices, moments, and the values we choose to live by. Evelyn Moore's story is not just a tale of kindness overcoming cruelty. It's a profound reminder that the power to influence lives does not belong solely to the wealthy, the young, or the bold. It belongs to anyone willing to act with compassion, no matter their position in the world. In a society that often rewards speed, ambition, and power, Evelyn teaches us the enduring strength of stillness, integrity, and care. She shows us that kindness is not weakness, and humility is not invisibility. Often, the people who make the most lasting impact are those who act not for attention, but from conscience. As we grow older, many of us begin to reflect more deeply. What will we leave behind? What will truly matter in the end? The legacy Evelyn left wasn't measured in titles or wealth, but in lives touched, hearts softened, and values defended. Her courage to stand up against injustice, her ability to speak uncomfortable truths with grace, and her unwavering belief in human dignity remind us that life's greatest work may not come with recognition, but it can ripple through generations. For those in their 40s, 50s, or beyond, Evelyn's story offers both comfort and challenge. It's never too late to live with purpose, never too late to speak out, and never too late to become the person you always hoped you'd be. Even a quiet life can be a powerful one when it's rooted in love, truth, and the willingness to act when it matters most. That is the kind of legacy worth building. If this story touched you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, please subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to tell more powerful human stories. It fuels our work, it amplifies meaningful voices, and it helps us continue to create content that drives change. Thank you for being a part of this journey.